We all grow up, don't we, just absorbing these ideas about what's beautiful. You see it everywhere.
Oh, absolutely. Marketing, movies, TV, sometimes even just casual comments from family.
Yeah, and it feels like there's this universal blueprint for the perfect face, the ideal body. It seems so natural.
Right. But what happens when you start to pull back the curtain on that?
And you find out that this supposedly universal idea actually has this really specific, often deeply painful and definitely racialized history.
Well, that's when you see the system behind it. It creates immense pressure,
Pressure how?
where a person's actual value in society, their job prospects, who they might marry, how they're treated gets tied to how closely they match an ideal.
An ideal that was never ever designed with them in mind.
Exactly. We're talking about structures that fundamentally devalue Black identity simply because, well, the working definition of beauty is proximity to whiteness.
That's heavy. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. This is a critical deep dive into the real cost of that ideal. Our mission, looking at all the source material we've gathered, is to really explore how modern beauty standards aren't just like random trends.
No, not at all.
They are deeply rooted in anti-Blackness. We're going to trace that line from colonialism right through modern capitalism.
And look at the impact, right, on identity, families, even physical health.
Exactly. We'll be drawing on research covering colorism, texturism, and the whole global beauty industry complex.
And before we really jump into the history, we absolutely need to define a key term here.
Okay.
Colorism. It's crucial, I think, to understand how it's different from racism, even though they work together.
Right, because racism is discrimination between different racial groups.
Correct. Colorism, sometimes called skin color stratification by sociologists, that's the prejudice and discrimination that happens within a specific racial group.
Based on what? Skin tone.
Yes, based on variations in skin tone, but also other features like facial structure, hair texture. It's about those internal hierarchies.
And the research we looked at is pretty unanimous on this, isn't it?
Yeah.
The whole architecture of this system is fundamentally Eurocentric.
It is. It's what we're calling the Eurocentric blueprint. It's explicitly designed, you could say, to give privilege based on how close you are to whiteness.
So darker skin gets devalued because it's linked to African heritage.
Well, lighter skin holds a higher status because it aligns more with European features, and the sources show this isn't subtle.
No. Darker skinned people often face these awful stereotypes, right? Like being seen as dirty or lazy, ignorant, maybe less moral.
It's a powerful mechanism for control, both externally and internally. Hashtag, tag, tag, I. The colonial foundations of the aesthetic hierarchy. So to really get a handle on how deep this aesthetic hierarchy runs, we need to go back. Way back.
To the origins.
Yeah, to understand how beauty itself shifted. It wasn't always this prescriptive, exclusive thing.
What was it like before?
Well, if you look at, say, ancient Greece or Rome or ancient Egypt, beauty concepts were often linked to the divine or spirituality.
So like adornment to honor the gods, that kind of thing.
Exactly. It wasn't strictly defined by race in the way we see later.
But then things changed. The sources point to a big shift, a kind of prescriptive turn.
They do. And that turn really gains momentum with the rise of institutional Christianity in Europe, especially during the Middle Ages.
So.
Suddenly you see light features, blonde hair, blue eyes, fair skin being framed ideologically. They become seen as physical signs of the light of God, of Christian purity.
Wow. So whiteness literally gets coded as goodness and light.
Pretty much. The ideal woman was supposed to look pure, virginal, young. It embedded a religious justification for prioritizing whiteness.
And this European ideal didn't just stay put in Europe, did it?
Not at all. It was actively, forcibly exported around the globe. Starting around the 15th century, you have colonizers going into Africa, Asia, Latin America.
And taking this idea with them.
Not just taking it, but enforcing it, imposing the idea that whiteness was superior. And this wasn't just cultural snobbery.
No, it was economic, right?
Absolutely. It was a socioeconomic strategy. The narrative explicitly linked proximity to whiteness with better jobs, better education, better economic well-being overall.
So that immediately sets up what the sources call a skin value hierarchy.
Precisely. A deep-seated system that was actually necessary for racial capitalism to function effectively.
Oh, so necessary how?
Well, if you can position one group as inherently having more access to resources simply based on their complexion,
then you can fix the labor market, stratify society.
Yeah.
Instantly.
Exactly. The color complex became a core part of that larger global system of racism.
And this gets really solidified, really institutionalized during slavery.
Oh, absolutely. In the U.S., across Latin America, colorism was systematically baked into the system of enslavement.
How did that work in practice?
Well, white slave owners consistently gave more relative privileges, of course, within a brutal system to enslave people with lighter skin.
Right, like assigning them domestic roles inside the main house?
Exactly. Working in the big house meant literal physical proximity to the white family, which itself functioned as a kind of social capital, however fraught.
And the contrast for darker-skinned enslaved people.
They were overwhelmingly forced into the much harsher, more dangerous conditions of field labor, kept separate from the white household.
And that wasn't accidental.
No, it was a deliberate strategy. It created divisions within the enslaved community itself, and it hammered home the idea that lighter features somehow deserved better treatment.
A trauma that, as you said, echoes down through generations, even in families today.
It really does, and we absolutely need to recognize this isn't just a U.S. phenomenon. This preference for lightness is global, and it's devastating.
Yeah, the sources mentioned Mexico.
Right, look at Mexico. A major study in 2017 found a shocking 45% gap in educational achievement between the Mexicans with the darkest skin tones and those with the lightest.
45%, that's enormous.
It's huge. It basically means nearly half the population faces systemic disadvantage purely based on skin color. And wealth correlated tightly with skin tone, too.
Which just blows up any idea of a race-blind society, doesn't it?
Completely. It shows how deeply embedded these hierarchies are, even when people try to deny a race exists.
And you see similar things in South Asia.
Yes, definitely. In India, for instance, the preference for lighter skin is complex. It's tied into the historical caste system, but also layered with centuries of colonial rule, Persian, Mughal, European.
And the sources mention the word fair.
Yeah, there's often this cultural conflation where fair means both light-skinned and beautiful or pretty. It's an ingrained assumption that the European or white aesthetic is just inherently superior.
And that impacts everything from who gets married to what ads you see.
Everything. And then you look at places like the Dominican Republic.
What's the dynamic there?
There's often a strong tendency to downplay or even deny African ancestry while really emphasizing Spanish heritage. People might identify with a kind of preferred brownness instead.
Because dark skin is at the bottom of the hierarchy.
Exactly. Especially for women, dark skin gets constructed as something undesirable, even contemptible. A view cemented over centuries of slavery and colonial rule.
Okay, so colonialism sets up this hierarchy, assigning value based on skin tone. The body itself then becomes the battlefield.
That's a good way to put it, because when we talk about anti-blackness in beauty standards today, it plays out daily, physically, on people's skin and hair.
And it translates directly into gaining or losing social capital.
Absolutely. Light skin functions almost like a currency. It links perceived beauty directly to higher status, more opportunities.
And that direct link explains why that European standard got internalized so deeply, even unconsciously, by many African-American women.
It does. The research confirms this. Their sense of attractiveness, their perceived worth, often becomes centered on having lighter skin.
We see the pain of this in personal stories, too. Yeah. Like former Miss America Nina Davuluri.
Yes, her story is really telling. She talked about how even her own family members back in India during summer visits
would tell her not to get too dark in the sun.
Exactly. Don't sunbathe too much. And then after she won Miss America, the public backlash, she remembers reading articles just dissecting her skin tone, judging her worth based on her shade.
It shows that painful cycle, doesn't it? The pressure comes from outside, but also sometimes from inside the community itself.
Yes, born from this desperate hope that members can gain that social capital by conforming.
And this issue of colorism is tied really closely to another ism, right? Texturism.
Inextricably linked. Texturism is discrimination based purely on hair texture.
So favoring straighter hair over coily or curly hair.
Precisely. It's a key way the dominance of Eurocentric hair norms gets enforced. The underlying message is that the natural texture of Black women's hair needs to be changed, manipulated.
Often using harsh chemicals or expensive weaves.
To look more like straighter, supposedly more manageable European hair.
And the psychological hit starts incredibly early.
Shockingly early. Studies show girls as young as 10, maybe 15, reporting being teased or bullied about their natural hair texture.
You're getting the message that how you naturally are is wrong or unprofessional before you're even out of middle school.
Exactly. And that bias doesn't disappear when you grow up. It translates directly into professional penalties.
How so? What does the research show there?
Extensive studies find that Black women wearing natural or curly styles are often perceived as less professional, maybe less competent.
Then Black women with straightened hair or white women?
Correct. Regardless of the white woman's hairstyle, this bias affects hiring, promotions, advancement, especially in more conservative fields often dominated by white men.
So your hair becomes a symbol of whether you're conforming to white corporate culture.
In many ways, yes. And the cost of that conformity is huge. Financially, yes, but much more critically, physically.
You mentioned focus groups with college women.
Yes. College-aged African-American women described making tremendous sacrifices for their hair, spending hundreds on weaves, relaxers.
And the source mentioned something really heartbreaking.
That sometimes they'd prioritize hair expenses over necessities like food or a gym membership.
Yeah, because the social or professional fallout from having bad hair felt more immediate, more threatening to their future.
It really highlights that feeling of being trapped, a no-win situation.
And the health impact. You said it's dire.
It really is, and it's systemic. Those chemical straighteners, the relaxers, they pose significant proven health risks.
Like what specifically?
Well, one long-term data estimate suggests that nearly 80% of Black women exposed to these chemicals over their lives might develop uterine fibroids.
80%. That's astronomical.
It is, and it directly links this aesthetic policing to chronic illness, to reproductive health crises. This isn't just about looks.
Which really underscores why we need legislative action, like the Crown Act.
Absolutely. California passed it in 2019. Other states followed. The fact that you need a law to prohibit hair discrimination just shows how political Black hair is, how policed it is.
What does the Crown Act actually do?
It expands the legal definition of race in state law to specifically include traits historically associated with race, namely hair texture and protective hairstyles.
Like braids, locks, twists.
Exactly. It was a direct response to policies, often in schools or workplaces, that unfairly applied Eurocentric beauty standards.
Like that horrible incident with the high school wrestler in 2018.
Yes, where the white referee forced him publicly to either cut his locks right there or forfeit a major match.
And wouldn't let him just cover his hair.
No, it was about enforcing a specific look, stripping him of his dignity. The Crown Act aims to stop that kind of regulatory violence.
Okay, so we've traced the history, we see how the body is policed, but then you throw capitalism into the mix.
And things get systematized and monetized relentlessly.
This is that idea of manufactured insecurity.
Exactly. The beauty industry basically takes that legacy of colonial shame and turns it into an incredibly profitable business. They exploit those deep-seated insecurities about dark skin, about textured hair.
Sounds pretty insidious.
It is. And it's been going on a long time. Think about early cosmetics figures like Helena Rubinstein back in the early 1900s.
What did she do?
She was really key in creating skin type categories. Dry, normal, oily.
That sounds standard now.
It does, but think about the psychology. It took normal skin functions, producing oil, getting wrinkles, and framed them as problems, as things that were wrong and needed fixing.
Ah, so creating a need for a product.
Precisely. Creating customers who felt they had to buy something to correct their natural state, often chasing that idealized purity that was established way back.
And the most obvious, most global example of this today is the skin lightening market.
Oh, absolutely. That whole industry, lightening, whitening, bleaching, it's massive. Estimated to hit, what, $24 billion in the next decade?
$24 billion.
And it's not randomly distributed. It thrives mostly in post-colonial countries where that old aesthetic hierarchy is still deeply embedded.
And the products themselves have a dangerous history.
Extremely dangerous. Historically, and still today, in unregulated markets, they often contain things like mercury or hydroquinone.
What does hydroquinone do? I remember you mentioning it.
Yeah, research going back to 1975 showed that while it might lighten skin initially, long-term use can cause this awful condition called ochronosis.
Which is?
It results in rough, dark, bumpy skin, sometimes abscesses, ulcers, and tragically, sun exposure makes it worse.
Which is terrible given that these products are often heavily marketed in sunny regions.
It's deeply problematic, and eventually the backlash got big enough that some companies had to respond.
Right, like Johnson & Johnson in 2020.
Yeah, amid major protests and activism, they announced they'd stop selling some of their lightening lines, like Neutrogena Fine Fairness, Clean and Clear Fairness, mainly in Asia and the Middle East.
And their statement acknowledged the issue.
It did. They said some product names or claims represented fairness or white as better than your own unique skin tone. which is quite an admission.
But it came after decades of profiting off that very idea.
Exactly. Was it real change or just PR damage control? That's the question.
Beyond the products, this bias seeps into media representation too, right? Especially casting.
Massively. Colorism heavily dictates who gets opportunities. The research consistently shows that African Americans with lighter skin and features seen as more European, smaller noses, thinner lips get way more roles.
In movies, TV, modeling.
Across the board, the media just reproduces that colonial status structure.
And when darker-skinned black women are shown in mainstream media.
They often get hit with very specific limiting stereotypes, hypersexualization, exoticization.
Like being dressed in animal print.
Yes, or other dehumanizing tropes that reinforce old racist ideas about black women being animalistic, overly sexual, maybe less intelligent than lighter women. It keeps that value hierarchy locked in place.
Even down to makeup shades. The shade gap.
Oh, for years that was a huge issue.
Okay.
Historically, the darkest foundation shades you could find in mainstream stores were just terrible.
Like that example, Biscuit.
Yeah, names like that, which would just leave this ashy gray cast on dark skin. The message was clear. You're excluded. You don't matter enough for us to make products for you.
And even with all the talk of inclusivity now, mistakes still happen. That youthphoria controversy.
That was a perfect example of the ongoing failure. Instead of creating a range of brown shades with different undertones because dark skin isn't monolithic, it's a spectrum.
They came out with what was essentially pure black foundation.
Right, which just showed a fundamental lack of understanding or maybe lack of care, or simply not having dark-skinned people involved in product development. Equity isn't just adding one token dark shade.
It requires real knowledge.
Exactly. And finally, even in scripted TV shows, colorism creates this kind of authority hierarchy that audiences pick up on.
Like the analysis of Blackish?
Yes. Viewers noticed that lighter-skinned black women on the show were often cast in more authoritative roles, more successful roles, nuanced roles.
While darker-skinned women were more often pushed towards stereotypes, like the angry black woman.
It reinforces that societal link. Lightness equals competence, darkness equals something negative.
And producers got called out for this, right? Even if they defended it by saying characters are based on their own families.
They did. Because the audience understands that casting choices have power. They reinforce societal biases that reach far beyond the TV screen. So all these external messages from history, from media, from the beauty industry, they don't just stay outside, they get internalized.
Deeply internalized. And the psychological consequences can be devastating, lasting a lifetime.
Absolutely. Think about the famous doll test from 1947.
Where black children pointed to the black doll and called it bad.
Exactly. And what's truly shocking is that follow-up studies, even as late as 2005, found that same phenomenon persisting.
Decades later.
Decades. It shows just how deeply ingrained these Eurocentric standards become, leading directly to self-hate, to what researchers call racialized body dissatisfaction.
And this hits harder for darker-skinned women, doesn't it?
Statistically, yes. Because they're positioned furthest from that Eurocentric ideal, they are more likely to experience that self-hate, distorted body image, higher rates of depression, feelings of inadequacy.
Just absorbing society's judgment about their own bodies, their skin, their hair.
Reporting intense anger, pain, confusion directed at their own inherent traits. It's tragic.
And what's particularly painful is finding out this bias doesn't just operate out in the world, but inside families too.
Yes, that longitudinal study, the FACHS study of African American families, really shed light on this internal dynamic. It revealed something called gendered colorism.
Gendered colorism, what did they find?
They found that while simply being black was the main driver of external discrimination the family faced, skin tone had a significant impact on dynamics within the family.
Creating what the source called the daughter divide.
Exactly. They observed that lighter-skinned daughters tended to receive higher quality parenting than their darker-skinned sisters.
And higher quality parenting meant?
Things like more responsiveness, more supportive communication, more warmth from the parents.
Wow. That's chilling.
It is, because it aligns perfectly with older qualitative research suggesting that parents, maybe unconsciously, absorbed society's view. Lighter skin equals beauty, equals social capital for girls, and they prioritized that.
But it was different for sons.
Yes, the dynamic was complex and gendered. For sons, the pattern often flipped. Darker-skinned sons actually received higher quality parenting than lighter-skinned sons.
Really? Why would that be?
And darker-skinned sons also got more intense racial socialization messages, basically. Messages preparing them for a hostile world, promoting mistrust of outsiders.
So is this awful paradox. Parents might be unconsciously preparing lighter daughters for what they see as easier social acceptance.
While simultaneously steeling their darker sons for the racism they know they'll face. It assumes lightness is capital for girls, but darkness needs defense for boys.
Just operating based on society's messed up values.
Potentially acting as agents of those values, yeah. And this internal anti-blackness is also a huge issue within Afro-Latinx families.
Often coming from lighter-skinned relatives.
Yes, relatives who've maybe internalized the mestizaje ideology, the idea of mixing to whiten. Individuals reported hearing devastating insults as kids.
Like being called una cara de mono, a monkey face.
Horrific things like that. Or being explicitly told by family members to marry a white person para mejorar la raza.
To better the race. That's just
No.
crushing.
It is. It's direct pressure to erase your blackness. People talked about going to great lengths to straighten their hair, avoid the sun.
Driven not just by media, but by fear of rejection from their own family.
Exactly. Pressure to conform just to keep family approval.
So how do Black women cope with all this pervasive body dissatisfaction? The sources mention two main ways.
Right. Broadly, researchers identify shifting behaviors or rejection of normative whiteness.
Shifting behaviors. That's like changing your appearance.
Yes, modifying appearance, wearing wigs, straightening hair, or even changing behavior, specifically to try and lessen the risk of stigma, avoid negative comments or microaggressions, especially at work or school.
But that comes at a cost, doesn't it? It's a paradox.
A huge paradox, because while shifting can offer social benefits, maybe getting the job, avoiding being labeled ghetto or radical, the internal cost is immense.
What kind of cost?
Feelings of inauthenticity, deep self-conflict, feeling like you lack freedom. You're constantly performing a modified version of yourself just to get by in white-dominated spaces.
And in those professional spaces, Black women often face that double bind, right? Being both invisible and hypervisible.
Exactly. Invisible in the sense that their actual work might get overlooked, credit stolen. Hypervisible in that they're often tokenized, seen as representing all Black women.
Which is immense pressure.
Immense. It just confirms their position in this exhausting psychological no-win situation. #V, resistance and the radical Black aesthetic consciousness.
Okay, so the standards are deeply entrenched. Systemic, industrialized, internalized. But there's always been resistance.
Always. Powerful, sustained resistance that's rooted in affirming Black identity, Black beauty.
Like the Black arts movement, Black is beautiful in the 60s.
Absolutely. Those were radical, necessary shifts. They actively promoted racial pride, celebrated natural Black beauty as a direct political challenge to that Eurocentric straight hair rule.
And that legacy carries on today.
Definitely. You see it in modern activism, in economic empowerment. Think about Afro-Latinx entrepreneurs.
How are they pushing back?
They're actively fighting that internalized anti-Blackness, like challenging terms such as pelo malo, bad hair, by creating martyr brands that are all about celebrating natural curls.
Like Rizzo's curls, Miss Rizzo.
Exactly. It's not just selling products. It's about fostering self-love, helping people feel seen, reclaiming identity through business.
And there's also pressure being put directly on the big corporations.
Yes, through really smart initiatives like the #PullUpOrShutUp challenge.
That was started by Sharon Shooter from Yoma Beauty.
That's right, and it demanded real institutional change. It forced the beauty industry to be transparent, to publicly release their diversity numbers.
Like how many Black employees, how many Black executives?
Exactly, at all levels. And the initial responses were revealing.
How so?
Well, one company might show, say, 57% white employees at HQ, but then 0 Black executives. Absolutely none in leadership.
Wow. So the challenge worked.
It forced accountability on products, shade ranges, hiring. It proved that supporting Black communities has to be structural, not just marketing fluff.
And maybe the most powerful resistance we see now is from individuals just embodying a different standard.
Absolutely. Contemporary figures who are achieving what researchers call disalienation. They're breaking free from those toxic second skin ideas by simply asserting that dark skin is valuable, intrinsically valuable.
And just by doing that, they shake up the whole hierarchy.
They do. Look at model Nakim Gatwech, the Queen of Dark.
Her message is so powerful.
It is. She talked about self-love, confidence, if you love yourself, other people will see. It's a direct contradiction to centuries of devaluation. She owns and celebrates the very thing society tried to degrade.
And Davina Bennett, Miss Jamaica Universe in 2017.
Yes, competing on that global stage with her beautiful dark skin and her natural afro. And she was celebrated for those features, not despite them.
That feels like a real shift, doesn't it? African diasporic beauty moving from the margins.
Becoming a source of celebration, yeah. And think about musicians like Lizzo.
Using her huge platform.
To celebrate every part of her body that dominant culture holds against her. Her self-love isn't just personal, it's this public act of resilience against racism, against judgment. It's defiance through joy.
So, stepping back from this deep dive, wow, we've really traced this whole systemic journey, haven't we?
We have, from the ideological roots in colonial ideas of purity,
Through its institutionalization in slavery.
to how modern media and industry enforce it, monetize it.
And the deep conflicts it creates inside people, inside families, often split along gender lines.
And the critical thing for you, listening, to take away from all this is that these beauty standards, they are not universal. They are not objective fact.
There's specific constructions.
Yeah.
Fabricated structures.
Exactly. Designed to maintain status hierarchies and, frankly, to make a lot of money. When we talk about colorism, racialized body dissatisfaction, we're talking about a system that needs to devalue Black women to uphold whiteness as the profitable default.
But the resistance shows there's another way.
There is. And the ultimate act of resistance, as we saw with the activists and artists, it goes beyond just reacting against those external views of whiteness or lightness.
It shifts inward.
Completely. Towards internal self-possession, self-affirmation. Which brings us to our final thought for you to consider.
What's that?
The radical Black aesthetic consciousness. That might be the ultimate liberation. It means moving past seeking validation from the outside. Instead, you start from a place of radical self-love, a love of self, and you use that powerful internal gaze.
To remake the world in your own image.
Exactly, affirming the value that was so unjustly, so systematically denied for centuries, starting from within.